Recently, a video on the Chinese social media platform Xiaohongshu caught people's attention. In the video, two men are yelling at each other, pointing fingers in each other's faces. Suddenly, one of the men leans in and gives the other a quick kiss, only to push him away immediately afterward. The kissed man falls to the ground, and seeing this, the other man decides to lie down as well, rolling around on the ground. Then there's another shocking scene filmed on the subway. Two men are seen fighting by repeatedly trying to kiss each other. At first, a woman nearby tries to pull them apart, but eventually she gives up and just steps back. In China, there are many bizarre ways people argue or fight, with some suggesting these unique styles could be listed as intangible cultural heritage. In a bustling market, an older woman attracted everyone's attention by getting into an argument with a younger woman. She started with some typical scolding, but quickly shifted to making strange sounds and flailing her arms. In rural areas, arguments between older women are a common sight. When things get intense, they give it their all, jumping around and waving their arms in a display of intimidation. However, neighbors are used to this scene and even stand around watching. On a rural path, two older women began arguing over a minor issue. At first, they clapped their hands as if to pump themselves up. Then, one woman with long hair threw down her hat, escalating the argument into a full-blown fight. They clenched their fists, circling and swinging at each other, while a few older women nearby couldn't contain their laughter. Another scene shows a heated exchange on a busy street between a middle-aged woman and an older man sitting on the ground. Throughout the argument, the man nearby tried to pull the older man away, but he clearly refused. Suddenly, the woman also sat down, and they continued their shouting match from the ground. At one point, the man took off his sandal, waving it as if ready to use it as a weapon. In yet another scene, two women selling breakfast get into a dispute, possibly over their stalls. While hurling insults, they point fingers at each other with impressive speed, making it hard to tell who has the upper hand. Many viewers commented that, when it comes to arguing, older Chinese women never back down. Like in this video, even if they're lying on the ground from exhaustion, they muster their last bit of energy to keep arguing. However, not all older women have the stamina for a full argument. When they realize they're losing, they may resort to other ways of expressing their protest. Recently, another video circulated showing an older woman and a man arguing after a minor collision. The man kept insisting, "I didn't bump into you. You did that yourself. Don't make a scene here." Frustrated, he even kicked a helmet lying on the ground. Suddenly, the woman retaliates with a headbutt, catching him off guard. He quickly raises his hands, shouting to another man, "I didn't do anything. Your wife's the one going crazy." He then gently pushes the woman aside. Seeing that she was losing the argument, the older woman lay down on the ground and played dead. Strangely enough, the man was arguing with took off his jacket and lay down as well. At this point, another man, possibly the woman's husband, picked up a brick to threaten the man on the ground, trying to make him get up. After several unsuccessful attempts, he too lay down, stacking himself on top. The bizarre scene left viewers speechless. They said, "This is getting hard to understand. I was lost for words by the end. And what kind of tactic is this?" Though women tend to argue more intensely, men can also leave people stunned when they get into it. A recent viral video captured a scene in Tongliang, Chongqing. An onlooker shared that the man in the video had been setting up a stall at this location for months, but an older woman was unhappy about his business success. She would claim the space with iron blocks every day, but wouldn't actually set up her own stall. After putting up with this for some time, the man finally confronted her. In the video, a man in black clothing and a hat is arguing on the street with an older woman in a pink fuzzy jacket. The man angrily shouted, "Just because you're from Tongliang, does that mean you get to bully outsiders? Tongliang doesn't belong to you alone, it belongs to everyone." At one point, the man's wife even joined in, yelling at the older woman. As the argument escalated, a large crowd gathered to watch and film the incident. The woman scolded the onlookers, saying, "Keep looking, what are you looking at?" In a quick move, the man seized the opportunity and kissed her on the forehead and cheeks 4 times, leaving her speechless. Onlookers laughed as they filmed. Witnesses noted that even while kissing her, he kept muttering, "It's not that old people are innocent, it's just that bad people got old." The video quickly went viral, with viewers commenting that the man had perfectly demonstrated using words, not fists. Some even remarked, "The world has gone mad." Eventually, the police arrived to mediate. This unusual way of arguing and fighting is a common sight in China, leading many to wonder why it's so prevalent. Experts believe that cultural and educational factors play a role. Professor Li Daokui from Tsinghua University has offered an explanation. Growing up in the city, he later moved to the countryside with his parents during the Cultural Revolution, where he experienced a significant culture shock due to the unstructured and rowdy environment in rural areas. City kids are used to following rules, at home, in school, and in public places, but rural areas are often unregulated, where nobody enforces rules. This creates an environment where children have to make up their own rules for how to interact and play, often through physical confrontations. Some believe that low levels of formal education contribute to these unconventional ways of resolving conflicts, like spitting or rolling on the ground during arguments. It reflects the broader disparity in education resources between urban and rural areas. For instance, larger cities have access to more educational resources, with Beijing, Tianjin, and Shanghai leading the country. Quality high schools are mostly located in medium to large cities, leaving rural areas with limited options. Many rural high schools have been closed or merged, leaving most towns without a single high school. Who suffers the most under this educational system? Primarily children from low-income families, especially those in rural areas, who cannot afford school. Many children whose parents work in other cities drop out after middle school or even before finishing it to start working. Meanwhile, migrant workers have limited expectations for their children's education, hoping they can secure any job. According to the Chinese government's own statistics, approximately 960 million people earn an average monthly income below 2,000 yuan, around $280, which constitutes nearly 70% of the population. At the same time, the wealthiest 1% of the population controls 90% of the nation's wealth, leaving the remaining 99% with only 10%. This reflects the stark inequality in China's income distribution. On the other hand, some social media users argue that these unusual confrontations reveal something about the underlying personality traits of the Chinese people, pointing to a common tendency to quick tempers. This trait is evident in many aspects of Chinese society. A few years ago, The Atlantic noted that this tendency to anger could be linked to the confrontational stance of Beijing authorities. Many countries, companies, and individuals find themselves self-censoring to avoid angering the Chinese government. The New York Times once reported on a series of incidents labeled as insulting China. Examples include the Spanish fast fashion brand Zara facing backlash for hiring a freckled Chinese model, a Hollywood actor accused of disrespecting China for referring to Taiwan as a country, a Hong Kong singer criticized for wearing Dolce & Gabbana, and an American sports executive supporting Hong Kong's protests. These people were all considered as insulting China. The term insulting China has appeared so frequently on social media that some joke there are 3 unavoidable things in life: birth, death, and insulting China. In daily life, this quick-tempered nature is even more noticeable. Kevin, a Canadian Chinese who recently returned to China, told overseas media that this was his second trip back since the pandemic. He observed a noticeable heaviness in people's expressions on the streets, as if many had lost their smiles. Addressing the social phenomena, Heng He, a prominent China expert and program host, pointed out that economic decline is the main reason behind the pervasive hostility. He observed that when the economy is thriving, society tends to be more stable, and people are generally more at ease. However, as the economic outlook worsens and competition becomes fiercer, people's tempers have grown more intense compared to 10 or even 20 years ago. Heng also mentioned that the Chinese government might be subtly encouraging this aggression. By fostering an environment of mutual hostility among ordinary citizens, the government diverts attention from its own policies and authority. This environment leaves people frustrated and prevents them from reflecting on the deeper reasons behind their hardships. As economic hardships increase, so do violent incidents. Amid rising social hostility, the plight of the five loss individuals has also gained attention. The term five loss individuals refers to people who experience financial loss, personal setbacks, broken relationships, psychological imbalance, or mental instability. Such people are estimated to number in the hundreds of millions. In an October article, Wang Shaojie, a member of the Central Finance and Economics Committee of the China Democratic National Construction Association, emphasized that China's slowing economic growth has put immense psychological pressure on these individuals. Founder and executive director of China Labor Watch shared with Voice of America that China's economic downturn has severely impacted workers who now face difficulties in finding jobs and have little to no savings. In this challenging environment, the working class feels marginalized, lacking support from family, friends, and society. Consequently, those who feel left behind may resort to violent acts to express their dissatisfaction. Hubei resident Gong Ping told Voice of America that as the economy deteriorates and some people find themselves financially desperate, there is an increase in revenge-driven incidents. He added that, with a lack of legal accountability and respect for contracts, anything could happen in China. On another note, Chen Bing, chief researcher at the Pacific think tank, pointed out that people already facing hardship and hopelessness have no means to seek help. The lack of effective legal recourse only intensifies their struggles. Harvard sociologist Martin King White published a report in 2010 titled The Myth of the Social Volcano. This report highlights a shift in Chinese public opinion. Where people once attributed poverty to personal shortcomings or lack of effort, they now increasingly blame unequal opportunities and an unfair economic system. Professor Sun Guoqiang, a specialist in Chinese affairs and international strategy, describes this social volcano as a form of implosive social resentment. He notes that it represents both dissatisfaction with Xi Jinping's administration and a personal despair over living conditions. Professor Song has written that in the Chinese Communist Party's mindset, if issues are not discussed, they effectively don't exist. Even when issues arise, only positive aspects are to be reported. Recently, the CCP has repeatedly ordered its officials to downplay issues and to focus on China's economic achievements and tell a positive China story. High-ranking CCP members have even prohibited comparing China's economic challenges to Japan's bubble economy in the 1980s, insisting that pessimistic views on China's future be avoided. Common economic terms like deflation, middle-income trap, Keynesian trap, Minsky moment, and Lewis turning point are also banned online. Song argues that ignoring problems does not make them disappear, nor does focusing on positives dispel negatives. This ostrich-like approach to governance only makes existing issues worse. For this reason, many observers believe that incidents of arguments and even violent altercations are likely to increase in China. To address this, Li Chang from China Labor Watch suggests that the Chinese government should focus on poverty alleviation, investing resources into welfare programs, and setting up support for low-income individuals through local city governments. This is crucial to helping people navigate the current economic hardships. In the long term, Li Chang believes that genuine religious freedom could provide people with emotional anchor. He explains that few people truly believe in communism, and the CCP, including its leader Xi Jinping, fails to provide spiritual comfort. Religion, however, offers solace to many people. Allowing space for faith could provide support for those struggling, as many people need this type of comfort. Yet, by cracking down on religion, the CCP has only harmed its own stability. Additionally, Chen Bing, chief researcher at the US-based Pacific think tank, argues that the government should invest real funds to strengthen social security and improve fair governance and judicial integrity. Volunteer services and psychological support agencies could also play a larger role. However, the public's trust in the CCP is diminishing. For some, like Hubei resident Gong Ping, the only rational course of action is avoiding danger by leaving the country. He sees China as entering a period of decline. Officials at all levels are merely waiting for the system to collapse, with no illusion illusion of reform. As he puts it, when an avalanche occurs, not a single snowflake is innocent. He remarks that while the disenfranchised masses cheer for national power, they overlook the fact that China is in a period of irreversible decline.